I want to welcome everybody to this free webinar to talk about the 14th Annual Conference on Sexuality and Consciousness happening in Montreal from May 22nd to May 24th. It is an absolute honor to actually be hosting this in Montreal. Just a little bit of history. The conference started 14 years ago in Sedona, Arizona, where Baba Dez started this. And I met Baba Dez about 3 years ago in 2012 when I went to his apprenticeship, his training, and the conference in Sedona. And I was really blown away and touched. And it was definitely that something that stuck with me, and I took it on with for the rest of my life. And in the last couple of years, I've been training with Crystal Dawn Morris, who I also met at the apprenticeship. And I went on this long apprenticeship with Crystal Dawn. And then through a series of events, I decided that Dez once mentioned, like, why don't we do the conference in Canada? And that seed was planted, and I got very excited about that idea. And it was all about timing. And as we know, as Mr. Kaipacha could tell us a bit later on, 2015 is a year about manifestation. So there was no better time than to take on the conference and bring it to Canada than right now. So I want to thank Dez so much for having the openness and the willingness to allow us to bring this into Canada for the first time. And I feel really, really privileged to be representing the International School of Temple Arts here in Canada and for this conference in North America. I want to talk a little bit about Crystal asked me to just give a bit of my storyline to set the stage. Like I said, in 2012, I ended up in Sedona, Arizona. Yeah, so I went through a journey with Crystal Dawn and the School of Temple Arts. And in the last 3 years, I've I stepped into remembering my personal power, remembering who I was, even like before high school, and I stepped into a path that is a very aware and very conscious. And I owe a lot of that to ISTA, Crystal Dawn, Baba Dez, Deborah Anapal, so a bunch of teachers from the International School of Temple Arts. So it's a great honor to be part of this. So I just want to do a little 2-second brief about the sexual renaissance. I decided to call this conference, the subtitle to the international conference, the Sexual Renaissance. And the reason I decided we came up with that is this idea that, the sexual revolution happened in the 60s and 70s. And this was about breaking down the current conditions of society. And that, helped with the women's movement, birth control, So, and now I feel we're in a place that the pendulum has gone from repression all the way to exploitation. And I feel that there's this balancing, harmonization that's about to happen. And we're coming to a place where we are reconnecting with the ancient temple arts, which ISTA is all about. And this is going to create a flowering around personal empowerment, the reappropriating of our birthright, which is bliss and ecstasy. And this is the reason why we decided to call this the Sexual Renaissance. And what's very interesting is in doing this conference, in organizing this conference, I did a lot of research on Montreal. And for a long time, I felt that Montreal was a city that had something to offer on the world stage in regards to sexuality and fun, entertainment, and consciousness. And in doing this research, I found out that the first settlers of Montreal, who were Jean Mans and a group of 5 to 13 people, were connected to a special energy. And this energy had to do with the feminine. And we're going to be discovering, and we're going to be going through all of that in Montreal at the opening ceremony. So I feel that Montreal is the perfect place to usher in a new time where sexuality and consciousness come together and really bloom, as well as bring through this energetic of the feminine and offer a space for this divine sacred feminine to show herself and to seed this energy, or actually watch the blossoming of the seeding that the first settlers had intended in Montreal. So on that note, I'm going to invite one of my mentors, the founder of ISTA, the International School of Temple Arts, in my opinion, one of the leading sexual healers around the world. I don't know anybody that has done more for the realm of sexual healing and sexuality and consciousness, other than the pioneers, which were Charles Muir, Margot Anand, and so on, than our next presenter, who is Baba Dez Nichols. So Baba Dez, why don't you activate your camera and come on. Welcome, brother.
Hey, thank you. Good to be on. Good to be here.
Paradigm shifter in what we are seeing in this modern movement of the sexual renaissance. So thank you for being a teacher to me, and welcome.
Thank you. You know, I feel like it's really just about listening to what wants to happen and then showing up to help it happen. So thank you, Frank, for making this conference happen and making this conference call happen and bringing us together.
Perfect. So I want to ask you, like, what was the spark that inspired you to put together this conference?
Well, at the time, I had just, it was 2001, and I had a supplement company, and I was very involved with that, moving around the world and promoting the products and health and nutrition, and really wanting to support people to live a happier, healthier life, and realizing that nutrition is very important. But then I kind of got really immersed in that world for 10 years, and I got out of that, and I wanted to go back into what I was doing before, which is basically teaching meditation, consciousness, yoga, and shamanic work around activating the emotional body. And then I started to really focus on integrating the animal and spirituality and everything else. So when I was in Arizona and I was looking around the States and looking around the world and touching with different people, what I noticed was the people that were really pioneering and doing this work were kind of on the fringes. They were kind of like a lot of lone people and educators and practitioners. And I said, you know what? We could really use some support for this. People that do sexual healing work were kind of underground, and everything felt very scattered. And it was like I could feel this place for a long time, where I realized what's really important is bringing the temples back on the planet, bringing back all the sacred rituals, bringing back all the things that really supported people to live at ease and power and happiness and maturity. So the first conferences were really about bringing the educators together, and it was a conference of sexuality and consciousness educators. So for years it was just about educators. Then other people started hearing about it, and more people started coming that wanted to meet the educators. And then in the last 5 years, it's turned into a mixture of festivals and conferences open to anyone and everyone, not just sexual healers and educators.
That's beautiful. One question I want to ask you, just for clarity, because when we talk about, you know, the Renaissance and temple arts, what do we mean, for example, by temple? Like, bring like the layman into the conversation by just giving us a bit of an explanation.
Well, in every culture around the world, ranging from to present time, all the way back to 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 years ago, especially, there were temples. And the temples were the hubs of the community, where commerce happened, where education happened, where things were celebrated, where people were, where there was healing going on and people were ill. So the temples were kind of like the hub of a community or a culture. And as cities started growing and people became more more sophisticated, then the temples became central places in actual cities and things too. So we have the ancient temple arts, which I said before was everything that had to do with healthy living, conflict resolution, medicine, everything, educating our children. So the temples were really important, and facilitating life passages and making sure that the health of the people, of the culture, of the community was well. And then what happened was the temples kind of were kind of smeared. There was a smear tactic happening. There was a big power struggle with religions, with a shift from a matriarchal culture to a patriarchal culture, and the temples were villainized. The red goddess of Babylon was villainized, and the temple arts were basically the library in Alexandria was burned. Babylon, which was the holy city of Babylon, was turned into a wicked city, and the high priestess was turned into a whore. And so this big smear tactic with religions, the Judeo-Christian kind of things. So then the temple arts kind of went underground for a long time. And so what's happening now is that we're seeing a resurgence of the temple arts, a remembering of the temple arts. Like I said, so much was destroyed and lost, but the energetics and the memories are there. So we have the ancient temple arts that we're remembering, and then we have the modern temple arts, which include modern psychology and dream work, and although that was happening back then too, but everything else that can support people to live a happy, healthy, empowered life. Permaculture is a great example of a temple art. So anything that supports people to live together in a healthy, happy, peaceful way. So now we're seeing the ancient and modern temple arts come back.
So what was the role of sexuality in these temples?
Well, it's the same role that sexuality has in our life. It's a very important part of our life. Sexuality is how we continue on as a species. Sexuality is something that is very much a part of, connected to what we call life force energy or personal power. It has to do with what are the things that makes the flowers open and the waves move and people grow and people feel and so life force energy is very important, and it's very connected with sexual energy. It's oftentimes the same thing. So if there's a lot of guilt and shame and fear around our sexual energy, then that also affects our life force energy, which affects our ability to manifest, our ability to be successful, our ability to have good health and abundance and happy relationships. So the sexual piece is very much part of being a human being.
And I'm guessing that, the same thing with fast food sex in terms of pornography, masturbation, all this tendency, that's giving up life force energy. What would you say about
exactly
that?
Well, that's exactly it. And we are human beings, and sexuality is a big part of who we are. And if we don't have a proper education and we're not supported in a healthy understanding and expression of our sexuality, it goes into the shadows, and then it's expressed in dark ways, in unhealthy ways, in ways that can create pain and suffering. So we see disease, we see unhealthy relationships, we see all kinds of patterns that have been really undermining our power for thousands of years based on another belief system that really doesn't serve. So what we're learning now is, okay, what is the belief system and what are the principles of living a happy, healthy life that actually services individuals, services as a community, services a family, and we can live well.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I feel like the ISTA is helping bring back like some rites of passage for people, because the rites of passage have all been like eliminated, burned, like you said, with the temples. And ISTA is like offering through like the level 1, we see some rites of passage that are starting to happen with ISTA. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, that's a lot of what is so important and what is so foundational is that as we develop as human beings from the time we're fetuses to the time, through our whole lifetime, that we're constantly moving through life passages, that we're developing from young fetuses, we're coming into birth as a life passage. learning how to walk is a life passage. The budding of our sexuality and our sexual energy, usually around the time of 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, that's a powerful passage. And so we need to be educated, we need to be celebrated, we need to be acknowledged about what's happening and how to use these life passages and the accumulation of our personal awareness and power so that we can actually manifest the kind of world and the kind of life we want to live in.
Yeah, so that's beautiful. Like, so you've been doing this for over a decade, and I want to know, like, how do you feel this has been growing around the world? So first of all, tell me about ISTA's reach around the world, because you're in like all five continents. And
right. Well, it's when I started teaching the work, and as it's been evolving, it was almost 30 years ago now. And then there was that time in the health supplement company. So for the last 10 years, it's really been evolving. First, the Sedona Temple, and running and understanding the nature of my own temple and holding a point in my own community. But then realizing that there's something that really needed to happen on a big level so that temples could work together, people could work together, and we could bring them back all around the world. And that's what the last 10 years have been. So it's been about establishing these conferences on every continent and finding the people who remember who we are, that are also dreaming the dream of ease and love and manifesting heaven on earth. And how is it that we can support each other? Because we're breaking out, like you said, we're breaking, there was so much repression and so much obsession. What is the nature of a healthy sexuality? And how do we use that energy in a healthy way? And how do we support each other to teach humanity the things that have been kept from humanity and keeping us in pain and suffering and darkness? So that's what it's about.
What I love is like that we're having the conversation, and it's like this new conversation from a unashamed, absolutely assumed position of our sexuality. And you're a beautiful example of that. Like, a lot of people, they hear about Baba Dez, they watch the Sex Magic movie, there's a lot of projection, there's a lot of judgment around you. But for me, when I follow you back in 2012, I saw a man that lives unashamed and fully assumed. And most importantly, what I saw from you as a nice model is that you're in your heart. So you could be a divine, masculine, sexual, juicy, seductive man, but at the same time, you're coming from your heart. And so maybe you want to tell me a bit about the role of heart in all of this.
Well, heart is the meeting place. We're beings of consciousness, and we're also animals. We're both. And then we're energetically, we're masculine and we're feminine. And then we express however we express. But everything is made up, including us, of masculine and feminine, spirit and animal. And then with consciousness, we have our past and we have our future. And what is the nature of being in love right here in the present? Being fully integrated in love with our masculine, our feminine, our spirit, and our animal, and moving through all the things that undermine our connection with who we truly are. So if we're in denial of the fact that we're animals, there's going to be stuff in the shadows. If we're in denial that we're spiritual beings and that we're beings of consciousness, there's going to be stuff in the shadows. If we're not in touch with our masculine energy, our masculine energy is going to express in the shadows. Same thing with our feminine energy. So the heart is about loving enough and caring enough to love ourselves, know ourselves, and also love and know the universe, love and know other people around us, other beings around us, this planet we live in, everything like that. So then we start coming into a deep reverence and a real healthy expression of life.
Mm. And so you've been traveling the world now, doing this for quite a while. Tell me a bit about what have you noticed changing in the world? What's changing in the conversation about sexuality and how we're addressing it through your lens?
What's changing? What I noticed when I first started, teaching and doing talks 25, 30 years ago was that, most people would maybe somehow end up at a talk that I would be doing. And a third of the room would, within 10 minutes, a third of the room would be asleep. A third of the room will be trying to figure out how to get out of there if they haven't already left. And then like a third of the people would be going, oh, this is interesting. There could be something here. Today, at talks and what we're sharing now, the information, what we're sharing, it's like everybody's more present. Everybody's ready for it. Collectively, humanity is ready to really wake up. We're ready to step into our power. We're ready to really heal the wounds of our past and the confusion of our past, and really step into who we are and be able to live from a much more empowered place. So I feel like what's going on collectively in the consciousness is that we're ready to step into the next piece of our collective evolution.
Yeah, I believe that as well. I think that the consciousness is flowing and we're ready to do this. What would you say is the biggest challenge that we're facing as a culture in order to, really step into and make this more part of the conversation, the social mainstream conversation? What's the challenge?
Well, the challenge again is we're dealing with fear. As soon as you start talking about sexual energy, for a lot of people, not as much as there used to be, but a lot of people start to get uncomfortable. So people start to get uncomfortable having the conversation around sexuality and how that's related to every aspect of living. We're dealing with religious conditionings, cultural conditionings, the very things that have disconnected us from our power. And when you start to talk about the very thing that's going to bring us back into our power, then that starts to create fear. Because if you don't have a healthy foundation and understanding of who you are, to actually start gaining power and holding power and circulating power and directing power can feel really uncomfortable. And that's the way that the guilt, shame, and fear works in the psyche, is it keeps us away from our power so that we can be controlled and manipulated by mostly empires and religions, and now corporations.
Absolutely. So when you think of that, like for me, I've learned from you. So I know that you're also speaking about having people like be in their power, but also in their ease, like living through life, not necessarily peace, because peace is so like difficult to attain, but this idea of ease. Like, what's keeping people from being in their ease?
Well, ease is power. In fact, magic and power don't happen unless you are in your ease. And what keeps people from being in their ease is that they don't have as deep of a connection with themselves as they could. So if we don't know who we are, and we're also buying into a lot of unconscious programming from our culture, then what happens is we're never quite all the way here. We're never quite all the way in our hearts. We're never quite all the way in our bodies. We're never quite all the way embracing our consciousness. And so then what happens is when we're not all the way present, it's scary because we're not able to respond to what's happening in our lives from a centered, grounded place. And because we're not centered and grounded, we're afraid. And we should be. Because if you're not living from a place of presence, then shit happens, So yeah, people get scared. And so what we're doing is, especially when we start addressing the very things that people have put off and haven't been feeling, oftentimes it starts to bring up what I call a dormant emotional body. And there's so many things to feel, like our fear, like our shame, like our guilt. And when we start to feel that stuff, then we need to have the tools to be able to process all the unprocessed emotions that have been out of our consciousness. So there's a journey involved with waking up. There's a journey involved with power. And even when you start walking in power, you can start feeling the results immediately, but it's still scary because it's unknown. And it's not reflected to us. We look around at most people, and they're not nearly sitting into their power and presence as much as they could be. And when you start getting in the presence of powerful beings that are in their power, then it's going to bring up a fear that you're not. And it's actually a healthy fear, because the only thing you can do is step into your power and step into your love and find the ease there. But that's the journey, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. We were talking about power and the whole relationship of us coming into our power and what it means to really bring consciousness to the full aspect of who we really are. And that journey that comes up. And I think what's really important is to be patient with yourself, to be gentle with yourself, and know that there are teachings and experiences as a human being that you didn't get. You just didn't get them. And that's scary to when you start feeling that here I am, an adult human being, and I never got the teachings and experiences I needed to be really an empowered human being. And most people don't even have a concept for that. And most people just like, I don't even want to hear that. Stop talking right now. I don't want to feel the shame of being ignorant. And our parents and our cultures and our religions, they don't want to feel the shame of keeping people ignorant. So it's all just a collective telepathic agreement to let's all pretend that everything's just fine, when in truth things could be way more fine. Things are fine, but they could be amazing.
Absolutely. Well, I think like this is all the stuff you're going to be going deeper in this in our talk at the conference, where you're going to be talking about building the field of love across the world. And so I just want to take a little time and say, so right now, because for the people that are attending this online webinar, we're offering some discounts. For the, not discounts, we're offering promotional tickets. So if you go to the ticket page right now there and you use the code ISTA webinar, I'm typing this as we speak, ISTA webinar, I have 10 tickets at $50 off. So 10 weekend packages at $200 instead of $250, and you use the promo code ISTA webinar. We have 10 of those. I'm going to be updating you throughout the con call in terms of how many are left. So if you know you want to come to the conference, this is your opportunity to get a discount. Des, I'm going to thank you very much. I'm going to get you back online when we start doing our question and answers. Thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thanks a lot, Frank. It's been great.
Thank you. I'm going to invite my mentor, my personal healer, my love, one of my loves of my life, Crystal Dawn Morris. Please come online. So Crystal is from Sedona, Arizona, and she's been part with ISTA since its inception, more or less. And she's been a Tantra teacher for the last 15 years, and she's trained under one of the pioneers of Neo-Tantra. And her name, that's Margot Anand. I'm seeing that we're having trouble with mic issues. Okay, so I'm going to go with Araminta. So before we go to Crystal, we're going to go with Araminta. Araminta, if it's possible for you to come online.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I could hear you. Thank you for being online. So let me give you a little introduction here. So Araminta is one of ISTA's faculty members. She is up and coming. She is from Guatemala. I just got back from Guatemala where we did the level 1 training, where we had 35 people in the training. It was absolutely amazing. She has a place in Guatemala called the Sanctuary, where she offers different types of workshops to the locals and the tourists and people like the expats in San Marcos, which is known as a spiritual hub of Guatemala. And one of the things that I really appreciate about Minta is her knowledge around the feminine. One of the things that she teaches around is the blood mysteries. A bit, there's a lot of shame and that has been built over the years around the feminine, especially with this idea of her bleeding and her being dirty under this concept of when she bleeds. So one thing that I loved that you taught in the level 1 was this idea that society only accepts 50% of the woman. They only accept the mother or the virgin. And you tell us a bit about the other 50% which society rejects.
Okay. It's the feminine in all of us. But yes, there's this concept that, as we moved away from the matriarchal cultures, which was much more cyclical focused and had a frame of reference about the nature of life force that involved not only the spring and the summer sides of life and the freshness of youth and the creative potential of the mother aspect, that inherent in the life cycle is also the darker phase, this withdrawal, this destructive phase. And so because that has been in many ways repressed, it's gone into our collective shadow. And on an individual level, that often expresses itself as a deep internal conflict and judgment with half of ourselves, half of our emotional body. For emotions such as rage and grief are not part of the, to be an evolved person, we think we have to, be past these emotions. So we're constantly suppressing so much of our reality and so much of our life force energy. So that's something that I've been digging around in and continues to provide fascinating keys to particularly where we are right now as a species, as perhaps so many of us are feeling this transition of ages, and that what has been hidden for so long is re-emerging, and that cycle, so that all the intensity that we may feel and the despair when we look at the world, at the challenges that we're facing, that actually, if we can allow the presence within ourselves to feel that fully, that's going to give us the energy to make it.
You got. I don't hear you anymore. I don't hear you anymore, Araminta. Oh, I hear you now. Speak.
Hi, I'm still here.
Yes,
I don't know if
good.
I'm happy about it, but wasn't sure if you wanted to go in another direction. Or...
No, it's good. It's good. So just go tell us a bit about this idea that there's the virgin
Okay,
and the
yeah. So
and then there's the crone and the priestess, and it has to do with the power of the feminine as well as the older feminine, which society rejects because of the the lack of quote unquote beauty or whatever.
So yes, what we've seen is that, let's say in religions like Christianity, the dominating archetype has been acceptable and praised is the Virgin Mary and then the Mother Mary. And so those aspects are still getting the thumbs up. As you switch into the second half of this circle, you can look at it as moving into more of the priestess and the crone or the wise woman. And those aspects of the feminine have a kind of a taboo and a contraction around it and have been associated with the darkness and therefore less than and ultimately a sort of an evil that we just want to deny. So the priestess archetype has a connotation sexual life force energy, again, the light side of the circle. This idea of using our sexual energy for procreation continues to be the box that is very socially acceptable. But when we move into the priestess archetype, there's this understanding that sexual life force energy also has incredible regenerative properties. Understanding that the healing power of our sexual life force energy is immense, and often we haven't been given the information and the skills to understand for our own healing and to share that with others. So that's one sort of powerful piece. As we move into the crone archetype, this is one of the most powerful things to reclaim, because this self that knows how instinctively to traverse the dark night of the soul, the part of us that when everything on the outside is melting and crumbling around us, that we have this inner lens, this inner compass that will give us the perseverance that understands deep down that there's something that is going to be reborn from the death process. And the fact that we've turned words like crone and witch and hag, all these words have lost their holiness terminology. Again, points arrows to parts of our humanity that are willing to reclaim them and to find out about more.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's exactly what I was going for. I wanted you to do. I'm going to invite you to do two things, Minta. Number one, shut your close your camera, and number two, hold your mic closer to your mouth so that everybody could hear properly. All right. So I want to know a bit about your role in ISTA. You joined ISTA not so long ago, and since then you've done quite a few trainings and you've moved into faculty. Can you tell me a bit about your process with ISTA and how it affected you?
Sure. I have been collaborating with ISTA for about 4 years, and the passion piece for me was pretty instantaneous. I took the level 1 spiritual sexual shamanic experience, and it was so transformational for me. I felt a part of my being had basically been waiting for some of the pieces that I received in that training. And so following that experience and just really recognizing the deep impact that it had in my being, I was kind of hungry for more. So a month later, there was a conference happening in Prague, and I dived into that. And very quickly, I was wanting to assist, and I started taking the trainings at different countries around the world. And in addition to witnessing my own deepening in, just letting stuff go and deepen in ease, I was also able to witness the transformations in so many people. And what happens to people, a month, 6 months, 1 year after the training, it just continued to inspire me. And of course, as you know, there's so many pretty wild and amazing and inspiring people in this global field that it was just a joy to feel the nourishment of being around open-minded people who really want the full extent of consciousness, but they're focused on the embodiment of their spirituality. And I think for me personally, I had been using, unconsciously, I'd been using my spiritual path as a way to bypass really showing up. I mean, I live in a beautiful part of Guatemala where there's a lot of sort of spiritual seeking, a lot of amazing consciousness practices happening, but this fear around addressing our sexuality, it's still prevalent. And so I really noticed that station is a vital journey, and for me, it's one that I've been just increasingly passionate about. So I took the trainings many times and assisted, and eventually started teaching about 3 years ago. And I just love it. It's such a, I'm so grateful to be able to be part of these journeys. They're such gifts.
Like we've had a lot of conversation around healing, love, and so how does sexuality play into this idea of healing or embodiment or personal power? Like a lot of people are going to be like, I don't know what these people are talking about. What does sexuality have to do with healing? How can sexuality be healing? That's what I want to know.
Yes, I mean, I think there's, okay, on one level, there's a relationship to pleasure. So this ability to run ecstatic states through the physical body provides relaxation, that all of our contractions have a spaciousness to move. So anywhere that we're holding and suppressing anything has an opportunity to be kind of flushed through and expressed. This idea that love is the most powerful force on the planet, that also for our creative potential we create in the world, whether that is another human through procreation, or whatever dreams we're holding as our true calling, as a sacred calling in life to manifest, then really getting in touch with how this energy is experienced in the body, and on certain places in the body that's felt and is experienced as erotic primal energy. And so often that has been demonized, and particularly judged as definitely not spiritual. And so I think unconsciously many people that have been very deep on their spiritual path have been suppressing the core engine that's going to support them to be fully connected, full channels between heaven and earth. So for me, it's there's also this piece that, you know, I think Dez was speaking into at the beginning. It's like we are spirit and we are animal. So, you know, there's a lot of discussion right now about integrating that, and that's hugely valid. And there's this aspect of, you know, spirit and primal. And when we stop fearing our primal instincts and we feel able to hold presence for the full power of them, then we have access to incredible amounts of instinctual energies and information that is precious. It's precious and equally as divine.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for that clarity. I'm going to go to Crystal, and I'm going to come back to you a bit later. Is that fine?
Yeah, okay. See you later.
So, Crystal, if you could turn on your camera and turn on your mic, I'd invite you to come on and join me on the screen. Crystal, you're on. All right, so I guess we're having a bit more technical issues. I apologize. That's the internet when you're bringing together people from all over the world to have, like, that's the beauty of where we are in our society right now. This is why I believe that we have incredible potential to change the way we are living, the way we're experiencing life through technology like this, that it allows us to pass consciousness and knowledge and wisdom so quickly through a conversation like this. But you can never have the same experience than in person. And this is why I'm going to take this opportunity to pitch the Montreal conference, because no matter how much we have, how much information we have online or whatnot, nothing changes the real life experience of being in front of each other, being the tactile, the touch, the sound, the experience. And that's what Tantra is. Tantra is breath, sound, and movement. And what better way to do that when we're together in the same room and living that experience? So, yes, please, Crystal, come online. Yes, I hear you.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, thank you, Crystal. So just a quick introduction. Like I was saying before, Crystal is a Tantra teacher for the last 15 years. She has studied under pioneer Margot Anand, and she is my teacher, my main teacher, my mentor, and I owe a lot to her in terms of the amount of spiritual, personal growth that I've had over the last 3 years. For me, Crystal is one of the most wise women I know, and it is a pleasure to be co-hosting this conference with her. Crystal is lead faculty at the for ISTA, for the International School of Temple Arts, and she will be leading the conference at the training in Montreal from May 25th to 31st. So, Crystal, welcome to the conversation.
Yes, I had a few little technical issues. I had to reboot my computer, but it's all working. Yay! So I'm glad to be back on with all of you. I got to hear a part of what Dez said, and I'm sorry I missed a lot of what Araminta said, but I'll listen to the recording later. Yes, I'm really excited to bring this conference to Montreal. I'm so excited to be working with you, and also to be bringing the training, which will be immediately following the conference. So I noticed that quite a few people have posted in the chat talking about, you know, some of the issues they're having, and so I just want to encourage people, as you were saying, people who have questions about their sexuality, about healing, sexual healing, about relationships, to come to the conference, and those who feel like they're ready to take that chance to jump into a week-long training that can really have a lifelong transformational effect. And as you said earlier at the beginning of the webinar, this is what happened with you. You came to Sedona in 2012 and went through the apprenticeship, through the training. You got the attended the conference, and it's really kind of took you onto a whole new trajectory. So I'm really excited to be bringing the conference to Montreal and to be bringing the training to Montreal and to Canada for the first time. And
the training, I'd like to know, so the conference, all the information is on the website. If you want to know more about the conference, the different speakers, what they're talking about, who they are, why they're world leaders, all the information is on sexualrenaissance.com. The training is a bit more, we'll call it mysterious, esoteric. Crystal, maybe you could share us with a bit like, what is the training about, and why is it impactful?
So I would say, as Dez mentioned earlier in the call, this training is foundational. So the level 1 training is called the Spiritual Sexual Shamanic Experience. And it is really a week where we dive deeply into what does it mean to be a human being, to be a divine being, having a human experience. We really look at how we can become more present, how we can have that journey between what Dez was describing as being the spiritual beings and having the human form, which is like the body of the animal body. And so we are consciousness having a human experience, experiencing what it is to live in a body in the world. And for so many of us, because of the conditioning we've got in our culture, we often feel like there's something wrong with us, we don't quite fit in, we have a lot of issues that create suffering. And what this training is about is how to bring yourself into ease, how to allow you to live from an open heart, how to really experience a life that is filled with love and freedom, and to know yourself as love and freedom. And that might sound, people out there who haven't heard these things, that might sound a little like, wow, how can you do that in a week? And again, this is foundational. We're going to give you the basic tools to begin that journey. And then we have a level 2 training, which again, we were talking about rites of passage. The level 2 training is really more about even more initiations to take you to an even fuller understanding of that, and really going through different initiations that will mature that experience. And then the level 3 training is really about how to live that life and to become like inspiring other people and becoming teachers and thought leaders in this field. So I really want to invite people to come and experience the training. So for those of you out there listening, I hope you can hear me. And again, this training is really a foundational experience that will help you to come into a place of opening your heart, of being able to be more present, more aware, to be able to navigate the world from a place of ease, and to integrate your inner masculine and inner feminine, to parent yourself in a sense, so that you can come into a place of knowing that you're a whole, complete human being. Hey, and back, yay, you're here.
So I want to talk about, because for me, you've brought so much wisdom into my life in regards to love and relationships. As we talk about this sexual renaissance, the bringing in of the sacred feminine, the new awakened masculine, and how these energies come together, the other topic, the other pillar of the sexual renaissance is this idea of love. Traditionally, when we look at love, specifically from the perspective of romantic love, we have this idea of coming together, commitment, oneness, merging. Tell me a bit about, the new, not a new, but getting back to the essence of what love is. Talk to me a bit about love and.
Okay, so what I would say is, once we come into a place of ease, when we come into a place of being conscious and aware, then what happens naturally is we begin to recognize that sense of separation, which is often what creates a lot of suffering for the human experience. And that's a lot of what the idea of romantic love is about. Somehow I don't feel whole. I've got to find this other person, and then I want to take ownership of them so that they'll make me feel whole. And that's really the antithesis to what I would say love is. Love is about the sense that I already know that I am whole. I am whole and complete. And love is really about this sense of celebration of each of us and whatever really allows us to express our divinity. And so when we come together with others, whether it's lovers, friends, family, community, it's as a celebration and to be able to express our divinity. And that can still look like a committed relationship if that's how your unique divine expression wants to express itself. But it's not limited to that. And it's also trusting that we can each do our dance and that is the expression of our divine self. And it does have a sense of, when we come from a place of knowing that we're infinitely abundant, which is the essence of the divine, then we aren't looking outside of ourselves to feel whole. That wholeness, that love just radiates like the sun radiates. The sun doesn't go looking outside of itself for its own light. And that's really the essence of what love is. I'm radiating my light, my love light. And I know that I'm whole and complete. And then whoever feels called to be in that light will naturally come into my field. And we trust that process. Whereas so often when we're coming from a lack belief, when somebody, for whatever reason, if a relationship isn't working out and it feels like people need to separate, suddenly we go through a lot of grief. And the process of feeling our emotions is very healthy. But when we're holding on out of fear, that's when things get challenging.
Yes, and I think that's one of the main things we get out of the training. We go on a journey of self-discovering, tuning into ourselves, rediscovering this masculine and feminine, figuring out where we're feeling in lack, and then kind of appropriating it, and then coming and exploring the juiciness and the vitality of sexuality. Tell me about, so in the training, some people, they ask, what is this training about? Is it about like how to become a better lover? It's this mainstream perspective of sexuality. When we think of sex, we always think of this consumption and so on and so forth. How does sex, love, and this training all come together? And juiciness.
Yeah, so I think a big part of what this training about is about how do we get back into a place. Someone had posted in the chat about that they felt blocked in their second chakra. So oftentimes, because of our families of origins, because of the training, the conditioning we've had in school, in society, we carry around a lot of baggage. And this training is about letting go of all the old baggage. So how do we let go of the stuff that no longer serves us, the beliefs we have, the energetic box we're holding on to? How do we become emotionally current? So how to stop living in the past and how to really be present. And then how to become more comfortable with that dance of the masculine and feminine within ourselves, and then we can begin to celebrate that with others. When we are letting go of all the old baggage we've been carrying around. So often what we're doing when we want to express with somebody sexually is we're bringing all of our old baggage from the past, from our past relationships, from our relationships with our parents, and we're just dumping it on top of the other person and then wondering why things get so messy. And when we can come into a place of really ease and presence, then we can really meet people in the moment, and that's when the magic happens. And that's what we really teach in this workshop and this training, is how to get back into that place of ease and presence and openness so that we can experience that deep, deep, intimate connection that is where, which is often what we think of when we think of that sexual magic, is when we have those moments where everything just clicks and we feel that stance of love energy. Like my experience of that very early in my life, I just was fortunate to be blessed with experiencing sex as becoming one with the universe. Not very many, I've met a lot of people who had that early on in their sexual experience, but I did, and it always left me wondering, why aren't people talking about this? And so it wasn't until many, many years later, and when I discovered Tantra, that I understood what had happened to me. And that's the beginning of what this training is about, is creating the foundation so that you can learn how to not only have those experiences spontaneously, but so that they can become something you can experience on a regular basis.
And how does that affect the way we show up in the world, the way we create in the world, the way we manifest in the world?
So I think when we know that we are whole and complete, and when we know that it's safe to open our heart and shine our light, we naturally radiate with the creative life force energy, as Dez was saying. Our sexual energy is our creative life force energy. It is what created everything on this planet. Everything that we see on this planet is an expression of our life force energy. And we are the creators of it. I mean, I was a midwife for over 20 years. I've been at over 2,000 births, and that was part of what brought me into this work, was seeing how the difference between women who were in their juiciness, connected to their divine feminine, and trusting their bodies, having that dance between the divine feminine and the physical form, and able to open and give birth to their babies colorfully and ecstatically, versus people who are in their heads, in their fear, and very shut down sexually with their sexual energy, and how hard it was for them to go through that birthing experience. And as a midwife, that was, that's the dance, how to help people, how to help women open up, and how to give them the support they need to do that. So a lot of what brought me into this field had to do with wanting to help make that process easier. And that has all to do with what you're talking about, with the celebration of divine feminine and of sexual energy and how it expresses in creating life.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, and I totally back that message, because it's exactly the process that I went through. I've done the ISTA training 3 times, the last time being in Guatemala with Minta, and every time it's just as powerful as the last time. And I feel like first of all, just witnessing people going through the transformation is, incredibly amazing. And for myself, every time I walk out more conscious of these concepts, and I see my life change. Like, I see the power of manifestation and creation that is happening so much easier, so much more rapid. And when you bring in the consciousness in this time, 2015 manifestation, it's going really fast. I want to take a moment and maybe get some questions. I want to open the floor to some questions. If anybody has questions, right now is the time to put them on. I'm watching the comment bar, and as these questions come in, if you have it for somebody specific, put their name. If not, I'm going to choose who's answering it. Crystal, thank you very much. I'm going to bring Araminta back on. And I will, Minta, come back on. Yes, so Araminta, good point. I want to also offer, so I have 2 offers for you this evening for the people logging in. I have the first offer, which is $50 off on the weekend pass. It's ISTA webinar as the promo code. And the second offer we're going to make is, if you are interested in stepping into your power and getting on a journey of spiritual, sexual, shamanically healing, we're offering the ISTA Level 1 training at $300 left. So instead of $2,500, we're offering the $2,200 early bird special. If you're interested in that, message me at frank@mondeose.com or on my Facebook, and we will take care of you and get you into signed up. And I like to say, it's the minute that you sign up for this training, the minute you say yes to this training, you are already in the process. Transformation has begun. You start embodying it, and you start opening yourself to the miracles ahead. Araminta, I want to ask your opinion, because you're fresh like me, just newly into ISTA. What is your opinion of why people would be reluctant to step forth, either whether to come forward to the conference or to come onto the training? What are the things that you have seen or you felt yourself?
I think there's often some fear that naturally arises, and especially with something like the training, I think there's a part of us that intuits the depth of the change that we're being invited to take, and that, this is the same theme actually. The transformational journey involves a sort of a death process. Some part of us an idea of ourself or an idea of reality is going to be shaken up. I know when I first went to the conference in Prague 4 years ago, I was nervous. I didn't really know what to expect. I was a bit concerned that it was either going to be over my head, or I would feel uncomfortable, or somehow boundaries would be crossed, or it would be this kind of crazy sex thing. And I had all these stories going through in my head, and so it was such a joy to jump into the unknown and then to realize that all these spaces are about integrity and presence and safety and authentic expression, and the joy that is present people actually meet authentically is actually what we're so deeply yearning for, that we're so quickly just by really feeling what it's like with so many people together. It's so delightful.
Beautiful. I'm going to invite Dez. Dez, if you hear me, please come on. I have a question for you. Minta, we'll get back to you. Dez, are you around? I have a question. So, hi, Dez. So we're having a question here. It's from Alberto, and he is saying, how do we start bringing in consciousness to who we really are? And what are the key steps that we can take to begin our journey?
So how do we discover who we are, and what are the steps we can take is what I'm hearing. And there's so many things happening at the same time as far as connecting with our hearts, opening our consciousness, deepening in our presence as far as our physical presence, coming back into our bodies. And so there's a lot of different elements involved. And that's why we basically developed this experience, is that if someone was stepping into being an empowered adult, what would be the checklist of things that they need to understand, and what are the experiences they need to have? And that's why we've consolidated into this week-long experience. So, without the experience, it's basically navigating the territory that we would do in a week. And I think a normal timing without an immersion experiences is there'd be a lot of hit and miss, and it would take a lot longer. But because what's happening is we are filling in the blocks, we're filling in the gaps of the things we didn't get at the point of conception. Like, what was the consciousness of our mothers and fathers at the point of conception? So, and it's not just an informational understanding of, okay, what was going on, but it was more of that, the impact on who that had on us as a being that was starting to develop. And then you have things that happen in the womb, things that happen at birth, things that happen in the first few years of life. And how do you go back and really get an understanding of neurologically, not so important about what happened, but what's more important is giving yourself what didn't happen. What is the ideal imprint that ideally our parents and our culture would give us that virtually no one's parents or culture ever gave them? So that's why it's called the spiritual sexual shamanic experience, because what you're doing is you're having experiences. You're having experiences that actually deepen, touch, awaken, and start connecting neurons in our consciousness and neurons in our larger cell of our bodies, as far as all the memory and all of the wisdom that's in our entire bodies on a cellular level. It's like there's things that we do that actually connect it up. That's why it's shamanic. So, I could go down a list of things of, and they're on the website. We talk about on the training, what are the things we cover. So there is a list of things that we're covering, but they're just a list of things. They're just a bunch of words. And that's not what's significant. What's significant is the experience.
So let's say our brother Alberto is like not able to step into a training as of this moment, but we want to give him a couple of tools. Example, one thing that I would come from is like, you know, you said it at the beginning, it's this idea of falling into the heart. I think that's where it starts. I think it starts like in the heart, opening the heart, like letting go this armor that we have around the around showing up in the world and just living a bit more authentically, maybe living with a bit more emotion. Let's give Alberto a couple concrete ideas.
There's a real simple basic thing that is very profound that's going to have an effect immediately. And that is if you can just create a time and space, a meditative space, to be in your room, let's say on your bed alone, and just start to talk to your heart and really start to bring yourself self-love and really start using your consciousness to ask your heart, what does my heart want? What am I feeling that I'm not? What is it that I want to feel that I'm not feeling as deeply as I could? And then actually start to really love your body with physical touch. And most people learned a masturbatory practice of self-pleasuring that was actually very addictive, based on a lot of visual, a lot of stimulation, a lot of things like that, and most guys especially, you know. So we're in this whole age of, you know, internet porn and all this kind of stuff, and oftentimes the stimulation that happens with our sexual body is not an ideal imprint. And so one of the things to heal that is to try to go back in time to that place when we were just awakening our sexual energy and start actually bringing loving touch to ourselves, loving conscious touch to ourselves, without going down the road of visual stimulation, especially that's non-human, you know, an interaction that's non-human. So it's self-stimulation, but it's not an interactive experience with another human being, and yet the energy is going out to another human being, whether they're on the screen or in a magazine. So what we want to do is we want to bring that energy back to ourselves and start what we call a healthy self-pleasuring practice, to actually start pleasuring ourselves. And every time our mind starts to wander and goes to some thought of somebody else, we bring it back to ourselves and just circulate our sexual energy in loving presence with ourselves, and to notice that, you know, and that can be challenging for a lot of people because we're so addicted to a different kind of sexuality. Mm-hmm. But that would be a very simple starting place. Start self-pleasuring and bring the energy back to yourself.
Basically self-pleasuring with conscious touch and conscious awareness around the pleasure in the body outside, without thinking of the outside distractions, girls, porn, whatever it be, just self.
Whatever it is, you know, you to bring it back to the body and start to circulate and generate that sexual energy, just celebrating it in you without it not being about anything else outside of yourself, but just, you know, so start really bringing that energy up, bring the energy down. And of course, a basic one that I'll say it, but it's very important is to move into a self-pleasuring practice that's non-ejaculatory, so that you're not spilling your seed, you're not spilling your life force energy. Very simple, but very powerful. And the thing is, it can be uncomfortable unless you also start using the practices to what we call circulate that energy. Because if you don't circulate it, it gets stuck right there in the root chakra, or right stuck in the second chakra, and then it can be uncomfortable or painful. So, you know, the easy thing is, and I hate to do this, but I'm going to, get my book. Get Sacred Sexual Healing. It's the book that Kamala Devi and I wrote. And there'll be some copies at the conference, but you can download it on Amazon. And it really gives you a lot of information, a lot of practices that are really foundational. And it's actually kind of like the textbook for the training. So if you get the book and you start reading it, it'll start preparing you for when you can do the training.
Perfect.
And I'm really looking forward. I'm very excited to come up to Montreal. It's a beautiful city. I haven't been there in years. I was in Toronto not that long ago. But, you know, Canada's gorgeous. I was up in Banff doing some snowboarding this winter. So I'm excited to get to the East Coast, and excited to, you know, meet the people up there. And, you know, I hear so many cool things about the city, so I'm looking forward to doing some exploring there. But more than anything, it's like I know how especially my experiences in Toronto and Montreal, how juicy people up there are, And so this is an invitation not just to, for other people to come together in this juicy town of Montreal, but for people all around North America and the world. So if you can get to Montreal, it's going to be a fantastic time. We're going to have a lot of fun. I know there's some dance events, there's some social events, there's going to be a lot of interesting speakers and a lot of interesting workshops. So you're going to get some hands-on experience. You're going to get some really fun interaction time, and it's just going to be really interesting. And the beautiful thing, the space is such a beautiful space and it's different than the training because you can come and go, you can see what you want, you can do what you want, you can hang out and just meet people, and it's a very casual experience. And yet, if you want to be immersed, it can also be quite an intense learning experience. So there's a lot of leeway for people to have the kind of experiences they want to have at the conference, and everything's always optional, and it's really easy there. So, are you back, Frank?
I'm back, and I'm going to invite Araminta to come on board. Araminta?
Hey again, can you hear me?
Hi, Minta. We have a great question coming in. It's about people that want to know, somebody that wants to know a couple concrete examples about what transformation looks like after a training. Maybe you could give an example and I could give an example, personal, or some other example that you have witnessed.
Number one, just a completely different experience of being in my. I remember walking out of the level one much lighter. I mean, I really experienced a sort of a tangible lifting of a ton of what I assume was kind of emotional pain that I've been carrying around. So I was experiencing myself just very differently, and I was seeing that reflected pretty quickly in the mirrors that were showing up around me. I also noticed a massive shift in my ability to communicate more authentically. Just naming my truth and being able to be honest and to name my desires and not stop lying to myself about what it was that I really wanted. I stopped wasting time, I think, kind of getting into codependent situations and trying to please everybody and just being more authentic.
Beautiful. For me,
what about you?
Say again?
What about you?
Yeah, so for me, I think, two major experiences that completely shifted the way I show up in the world. Number one was after one of the one of the climaxes of the exercises in the training, which I'm not going to talk about on here because we like to keep it part of the process. I woke up to finding or reconnecting with my true essence, and I realized that the last time I was connected to my true essence, I was a toddler, like 3 years old. So I reconnected with my spirit, and from that point on, I showed up in the world with a lot more like presence, authenticity, and power. In addition, what helped that was this acknowledgement of the fact that both the masculine and feminine are present in my being. And through the exercises, I realized that I was showing up in the world as an unhealthy masculine and a wounded feminine. And without the examples of what an empowered masculine and an empowered feminine looks like, or the sacred masculine, sacred feminine, whatever you want to call it, without those examples and without those exercises, I don't think I would have ever really realized that I was going through life in the model of lack. I was in my relationships in lack. I was in my romantic relationships in lack. I was experiencing my businesses in lack. So I always came from this place of victim. Things were happening to me and not really realizing that I had full power and full control or choice to affect my reality in front of me. And it was only after realizing the spectrum of the unhealthy masculine and the empowered masculine and the wounded feminine and the empowered feminine, how those four archetypes were operating in my life. And that I absolutely give full credit to this training, and I really, really, really am thankful that I had this experience, because if not, I would be operating in a vicious circle of victimhood and disempowerment, where now I know that I am a conscious creator in this existence, and I will not settle for things happening to me, except that I'm gonna attack my life with choice and power. So that's one real concrete thing that happened to me. I'm gonna look at some other questions here. So I don't see any more questions, and we're coming to the last 5 minutes. So if we have any more questions, I will take them. If not, I will repeat that if we go onto the purchase page of the conference and you put in ISTA webinar, you will get $50 off. And there are, I think last time I checked, 7 left. So I hope this conference, this webinar has answered some questions, given you a bit more perspective on what's going on. I want to talk about, actually, I'm going to invite Kaipacha, another one of my teachers, to come on board. Kaipacha, if you are on, please activate your mic and camera. So Kaipacha is one of the keynote speakers, as well as Baba Dez, Laurie Handlers, and Ma Premo. Kaipacha has a weekly evolutionary astrological report online. You could find it at New Paradigm Astrology. I've been on 2 trips with Kaipacha, where we studied astrology, evolutionary astrology, and at the conference he's going to be talking about how to redefine the masculine and feminine for the new paradigm. And he is so interesting and so tuned in to what is going on. He's like a prophet, in my opinion. So just check out his online Pele reports, astrology reports at New Paradigm Astrology. I guess he may have checked out. They come out every Tuesday and or Wednesday. And he will also be giving a 1-day astrological training in Montreal on Tuesday, May 26th. So that can be found on the website under related activities. So yeah, if there's no other questions, I want to thank everybody for being present. I want to thank Crystal, Araminta, and Dez for taking their time to be here. I like to say that ISTA and the faculty of ISTA all around the world are the tip of the arrow, or the tip of the spear, flying through the air and piercing the new paradigm and bringing in new consciousness. I've done training, different types of trainings around sexuality, around healing, and none of them have been as powerful as the spiritual sexual shamanic experience. And I really do believe that this is the leading technology which is going to help the world transform. Everybody should do this training. And I want to correct one thing. We often talk about this idea of healing, but for me, it's not really about healing. It's about transformation. Sometimes when we say healing, there's this idea that maybe we're sick or there's something wrong with us. But this is not. It has nothing to do about being sick. It has to do with being, unconscious or forgetting where we are or who we are. So it's really about remembering and transforming where we live, where we show up in our life as a victim or lacking, and really taking control and transforming that lack paradigm to an abundance paradigm, one that's filled with love, freedom, bliss, and empowerment. I think we have a couple of questions or comments. Thank you for all sharing your knowledge. Much love, respect. Thank you so much for bringing this webinar. Great topics. Yes, Dez just posted where you could find his book, an amazing book. It was really effective in my life, and it will be available at the Sacred Sex Boutique at the conference. So mark your calendars, May 22nd to May 24th. It's really reasonably priced, and I really encourage people to say yes, because the minute you say yes, transformation begins. So on that note, I also want to recognize Neil Gower, the host of this Portal to Ascensions, who has offered his platform completely free so that we could get this message out, because he believes in what we're doing. And I want to thank you, Neil, for giving us this opportunity. It is so appreciated. And all of us at ISTA and around the world, we really appreciate for your support. Thank you, thank you. I love you. Namaste. In Lakesh, which means I am another you, you are another me. It's the only way we're ever going to change anything. So, my friends, let love free. No longer keep it hostage in the heart. No longer keep it hostage in a relationship. Let it flow, release, open, and the loving are the daring. So, step into your power. You're worth it. I love you. Peace.